Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where it has been a difficult day on Capitol Hill as we cover multiple breaking news stories. At this moment, we are less than 36 hours from a government shutdown, while at the same time, lawmakers are mourning the death of an American trailblazer, Senator Dianne Feinstein, the Senate's longest-serving female lawmaker in history. We'll have much more on the senator's enduring legacy and reaction to the news of her passing in a moment. But amid that sad news right now, House Republicans are huddling behind closed doors in the basement of the Capitol as Speaker McCarthy tries to regroup after failing to pass a short-term spending bill just a few hours ago. A group of conservatives tanked that bill with 21 Republicans voting no. Ahead of the vote, McCarthy accused any holdouts of helping Democrats.
I can't understand why someone would side with President Biden on keeping the border open. We'll see when the vote comes. If those individuals vote that way, you should ask them that question.
The failure of today's vote punctuates a wild and chaotic stretch for Speaker McCarthy as he faces threats from hardliners inside his conference to oust him from leadership if he makes a deal with Democrats. House Republicans did pass 3 of 4 appropriations bills yesterday, but those alone don't do anything to avert a shutdown. And tomorrow, Congressman Dusty Johnson, who helped negotiate the short-term deal, voiced his frustration with his colleagues after this afternoon's failed vote. Listen.
If we could get some sort of a CR that cuts spending and secures the border, I'd work with anybody to get that done. And I think you see that approach building a little steam in the Senate. The stopgap funding measure that I authored would have kept government open, cut spending, and secured the border. I'm still a little frustrated that 21 Republicans sided with the Democrats to defeat my measure.
Now, it's worth noting, even if today's short-term bill had passed, provisions like the new border security measures Johnson mentioned all but guaranteed its failure in the Democratic Senate. Joining me now from Capitol Hill is Ryan Nobles, and with more on what the practical impact of a shutdown might be is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kube. Ryan, I have to start with you. What's the latest there after this failed vote?
Well, there's really a sense of turmoil on Capitol Hill, Kristen, with no clear idea what the next step will be in order to at least make some sort of last-minute attempt to prevent the government from shutting down. But the real sense here is that all those opportunities have really passed. And at some point, members of both the House and Senate are going to have to take a step back, restart the negotiations, and try and find a way to limit the damage of the shutdown, meaning how quickly can they get out of it after the government does shut down midnight on Sunday. We're already starting to see some of the blame game start to crop up, and a lot of that blame is being put squarely on the shoulders of conservative House Republicans who have just turned down every potential opportunity at even a short-term spending plan. We saw that today where Kevin McCarthy put a bill on the floor loaded with desires that the conservative wing of his party was looking for, and they still turned it down. So the question has to be asked, what's it going to take? Listen to what the Democratic leader in the House had to say about the negotiations at this point.
These so-called moderate members of the Republican conference have been missing in action. There are a variety of different procedural vehicles that are available to us, including a discharge petition, one of which that is live, and that all we would need are 6 Republicans to partner with us, and we can move legislation to the floor that would end this GOP government shutdown and this national nightmare for the American people.
And Kristen, a lot of times when we cover Capitol Hill, we joke that there is always someone out there on the internet or some other corner of the universe that floats what we call the West Wing type of solution to a problem like this. Something that, you know, if you look at it on the books, it's probably something you can pull off, but it's really just something reserved for an Aaron Sorkin script, not necessarily something that happens in the halls of Congress. Well, we've reached the stage of needing some sort of West Wing, the TV show type solution in order to keep the government from shutting down. And that's what you heard the minority leader talking about right there, this possibility of a discharge petition, which would allow them to bring a piece of legislation to the floor of the House without the speaker's blessing. But they need a group of Republicans to join with Democrats in order to make that happen. They have a vehicle, a piece of legislation they could do that with. Right now, though, they don't have willing partners, and that's been the biggest problem in this process from the very beginning, is that it's been very hard, at least on the House side, to get Republicans and Democrats to work together. Kristen?
Well, Ryan, what a great analogy there. Speaking of a potential Hollywood ending, the Senate is trying to have this end-run workaround by passing a continuing resolution, a short-term bill, potentially this weekend, that would have bipartisan support. But would that be enough to avert a shutdown, Ryan?
I mean, it really depends on the timing of all of it, Kristen, and whether or not they can still cut a deal with Kevin McCarthy. So here's the issue. You know, the Senate has in place a bipartisan continuing resolution, a short-term spending bill. It does include funding for Ukraine. It does include disaster relief. It has wide bipartisan support on the Senate side. The test vote on this got over 70 votes. The problem is it's not enough to pass on the House side. So what needs to happen here over the next 48 hours or so is that Kevin McCarthy's got to make an agreement with Chuck Schumer that if you put something else in this, or you take something else out, maybe you pull the Ukraine funding out, maybe you add in something having to do with border security, and then Kevin McCarthy can say, you know what, that's enough for me to get the majority of the Republican caucus to jump on board. You guys pass that. Maybe it happens after the government shuts down Sunday morning, and they do it Sunday afternoon in time for the government to reopen back on Monday. But nonetheless, that negotiation still needs to happen in order for that escape hatch to be pulled. They're just not at that point quite yet.
Yeah, it's starting to look like a question of how long, not if, the government's going to shut down. And we know, Court, at the Pentagon, they're watching all of this very closely. What are the potential implications for the military? Would this impact paychecks?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is one thing that we do know at this point. At this point, if in fact there's a government shutdown, active duty members of the military and reservists who are on federal active duty will be expected to continue to come to work and will not be paid. Now, in the past, there have been times where the U.S. government has faced other shutdowns, and they've been able to figure out a way to keep the military paid. But at this point, we still do not expect them to get paid if the shutdown goes into effect this weekend. Now, in addition to that, as if that's not already concerning enough for members of the military, many of whom, according to advocates who we've spoken with, especially younger enlisted, only keep about $3,000 in savings at any given time. So the paycheck alone is concerning. But in addition to that, the things that among the services that we expect to be curtailed under a government shutdown, medical services will continue, emergency medical services at military hospitals, but elective services will not. Prescription drug coverage and pharmacies will stay open, but if they're manned by civilians and civilians are furloughed, it's not clear how many, whether they'll be able to continue the staffing at the same level. So some prescription drug services may be impacted. Now, some base services, things like commissaries, at this point, we expect that commissaries in the United States will be shut down. Overseas, they may stay open. But we're also waiting for a final list. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin will get a whole list of options, and he will decide what will and will not be accepted. We should hear that over the next couple of days, Kristen.
A really urgent situation for members of the military that you paint there. Courtney Kube, thank you so much for that. And our thanks to Ryan Nobles as well. And with
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.